Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
So I came across an article the other day about some really surprising education gains happening in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. You heard me right, the Deep South. It caught my attention because it's not what people expect. And I thought, my kids need to hear this. I shared it with you two because it's a good reminder that sometimes progress shows up where you least expect it. And while I'm not here to be pushy, it's also a little nudge to keep an open mind, look at the data, and see the nuance. Let's dive in and see what's really going on and why it might matter for kids and communities and the future.
If you didn't know it already, that might be one of my favorite words, nuance. And identifying that nuance is one of the reasons we do this podcast. And this story seems to have it in spades. There are assumptions, surprises, historical context, policy changes, and measurable progress happening in places most people wouldn't expect. The way reality complicates stories about education, politics, and what works or doesn't, because to me, it's not just important to know the what behind something, you also need to figure out the why to really understand it.
We all grew up in the Texas public education system, so we know what that system looked like firsthand. The struggles, the gaps, the good teachers that we loved, bad ones. That's why this article really grabbed me. Some southern states, historically written off in education rankings, are actually showing real signs of improvements, especially in literacy. And I'm excited about that and hopeful. This could be the start of meaningful change, but I'm also skeptical here. I want to see how these gains hold up over time. How does this early push affect kids 5, 10, 15 years down the road? Will it translate into better futures for these kids as adults? That's what I'm most curious about. So let's break down exactly what's happening in these states, why it's surprising, and what it could mean for the kids and their futures. Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom. I'm Callie.
I'm Cole.
And I'm Mom. So granted, this was an opinion piece about the 3 red states, but it had some really interesting ideas in it.
Yeah.
The big one being that these 3 states are really focusing on literacy at a young age. They want kids to be able to read before they get out of 3rd grade, which I think is phenomenal because I really do believe that if you teach a kid to read, you give them everything else. I mean, it opens the world to everything else if they can read. And if they can't read, all of the handicaps that puts on them. So to me, this makes complete and total sense. You're teaching them the basic thing of reading, and that's opening up a lot of other things. There's some other things they're doing, which we'll get to.
It just very much feels like a teach a man to fish situation, right? Like if you can teach the kids to read, they can then go on to do anything. Their opportunities are endless. But if they can't read, everything, all of the hardship and crap that they're going to face as growing up and as adults is compounded exponentially.
Yeah.
Which
So
is scary.
let me see if I've gathered this here correctly. Historically speaking, if you've got schools that are struggling to meet a specific metric in the past, instead of taking steps to make sure that kids are meeting that benchmark, they have just lowered the benchmark.
Well, again, Cole, I think that this goes back to that same kind of that we talk about often on this podcast. We're treating the symptoms, not the cause.
Yeah.
And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about. We're just lowering the bar instead of addressing the problems. Like that isn't helpful. That's not productive. Certainly not long term.
I think it's also making a lot of excuses instead of going for, let's find something that is at the bottom of this that will lift it up. And it appears that these 3 states have decided this is what it is. This is where we can really fix things. And they're doing it. And I think one of the amazing things about this is they're doing it at a much lower price that some of your quote unquote top schools are doing per student. And they're doing it in, I'm not even going to say innovative ways, because I don't think they're innovative. I mean, they're teaching them to read, they're teaching them math. If they're not coming to school, they're following up on why they're not coming to school, and they're getting them back in school. And
the basics.
And they're, basic things.
They're now doing the bare minimum, and turns out it works.
It's brought their scores up to the top. I mean, in a short period of time, it's brought their scores to the top, and people should be paying attention to this because, Cole, it's basic. And if we can do basic things inexpensively and teach children, this seems like a no-brainer to me.
I don't disagree with any of that. This is where I start to get a little more skeptical. These couple of states that you're talking about, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, are notorious for having the bar on the ground. So to make big, huge gains doesn't take a ton, but I do get the sense that they've done more than just pick the bar up a little bit. They're actively raising it.
If you look at these states, they're low economic for sure. So the bar has been low because we've given them, how did you say it, Cole? We just lowered the bar because we didn't think that, quote unquote, these kids were capable of learning.
We've written them off.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The bar is moving in two places. It is moving for the students, the kids, but it's also moving for the system, for the teachers, for the school districts. They're now being held accountable to say, hey, you can't just lower the bar anymore.
Yeah.
You have to do your job.
Yeah. And accountability is a fascinating tool.
Really fighting for those scores, and they're doing it from every facet. I mean, are your teachers doing what they're supposed to be doing because they're getting rated too? Are the students doing what they need to be doing because they're getting rated? And then the school district itself is getting rated. So they're looking at it from multiple avenues, but they're accomplishing something
more holistically.
There's another party to this formula, another variable here, if you will, that is also having the bar raised. Because my understanding when we were talking about this earlier is that attendance in these schools, chronic absence was extremely high. And now they're holding the parents accountable, saying, hey, your kid has to come to school. And if not, we're going to fine you. We're going to take you to jail. You have to be a parent and make sure that your kid is showing up to school, or we're going to hold you accountable for that.
Which you've taken a hard stance on that, but it didn't sound like the schools had really taken a really hard line against it, but they are addressing it, and I think that means something.
They're using it as a threat.
Yeah, we talked yesterday about the carrot and the stick. You don't have to hit someone with the stick to raise it up and look like you are.
The threat is a lot.
Yeah.
So post-COVID, schools haven't really recovered for that absentees. I think there's still a 23% level of kids, not, absenteeism in schools across the nation. These 3 states have eliminated that. I think they're in 10 or 11%. They've eliminated, and they've done that by talking to the schools. There was a story in the article about a girl who I think was a sophomore, and she took a job after school, 12 hours. I mean, from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. to help with rent and groceries. And you got to admire a kid for doing that and understanding that. But how do you go to school after working an all-night 12-hour shift? And so the school went to the employer and said, hey, we got to figure out something different. She needs the job, but we got to figure out a different way to do it. And
she has to come out of school being able to get a different job, being able to get a job that she can excel at and do better.
especially if she wants to break the pattern that she's living in.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they went to online courses for her. They did a little bit of shift changing with her. I mean, she kept the job and she kept being able to contribute to her family, but she also was able to attend school. That means you got to go a little bit beyond. You're not just looking at your school and some kind of crazy score there, but you're looking at the individual and addressing this, which is probably my biggest complaint about schools is I think that we teach the average. And so the kids who are gifted are the kids who are not
Struggling.
learning art Cole, who learn in a different manner than most kids do, are left out. And so this looks to me like these schools are addressing part of that. They're addressing the individual and focusing on that individual to create something. And they're doing it without spending tons of money.
And I think that that's part of what is so surprising about all of this. Sitting here talking about these 3 deep South states that would definitely be considered red states, which, I mean, what did we have in here somewhere? Red states equal bad schools, blue states equal good schools, like the automatic stereotype of that. But you are talking about primarily places with a much higher poverty rate, with uh with budgets that are not being spent or used on schooling and education. And then you take into the consideration the racial divide between classes of people, between groups of people, and it's a big delta. All of those things of what is going into blue state schools versus red state schools, it's a big delta. And so somehow I would love to know where this really started, who the original catalyst for this was, and just say, great job.
I think it was some superintendents of specific districts that
I
said,
love that.
hey, we can fix this. We can do better. But there's also a long history for those superintendents, too. You can't do this and be hit and miss about it. You got to be consistent, and you got to be consistent over years to make this show up.
Yeah, I mean that's how an underdog story works, right? You don't just have all of these people who are showing up mediocrely and being like, "Okay, well, I guess we still suck." They're working their butts off over and over and over and over again. They're falling down and getting knocked down and picking themselves back up and going back to work again. Like, this is failing upwards. So Mississippi was treated as the poster child in one of these case studies that is referenced. They have taken a couple of different focuses that I think are worth noting. They have started using the science of reading curriculum, which, truth be told, I didn't know what that was. But it has key characteristics of a specific kind of curriculum that is structured around literacy, systematic and cumulative instruction, decoding and phonics, emphasis on blending sounds and mapping them to letters rather than guessing, oral language and knowledge, building background knowledge and vocabulary to aid in comprehension. And then the whole thing is evidence-based, utilizing methods that support all learners, including those with dyslexia, which, again, you can sit here and say, oh, well, my kid doesn't, so it's not a problem for me. But if your kid doesn't, that means that somebody else is getting missed and something else is not getting addressed, or something is getting addressed that your kid is missing because that doesn't directly impact them. And so I think that and maybe this is a stretch, but I think that there's a level of empathy that is being taught, or compassion that is being taught through those things. Like, hey, so-and-so learns different than me. That's okay. We can learn together. And I think that that's really, really good for especially kids with young, malleable minds to see and learn and experience.
Because they may not even pick up on it off the rip. And
Right.
I don't know the veracity of this, but I believe it is a quote that is attributed to Albert Einstein, and it's really more of like a parable. You have a fish and you have a monkey. If you're grading the fish on its ability to climb a tree, the monkey is always going to win. The monkey will
Yeah.
always be rated higher. But if you say, okay, this is what the fish is designed for, this is what the fish is built for, let's grade
Yeah.
him on those and improve his skills there. Now you're really more talking about an even playing field. It's kind of like a couple months ago when we were talking about the interview with Barry Weiss and
Roland Fryer.
where I mean, he's talking about DEI, but from a completely different perspective of, hey, historically, like, where are your strengths and weaknesses? What have you had to battle against? And now we're grading you on that, on your capability to overcome your individual challenges, rather than saying, oh, well, everybody has the same challenges. Who has overcome the most?
Yeah, they're all different roller coasters that we're riding.
Yeah. And like you said, Callie, I think that's very much rooted in empathy. And again, maybe it's not that the kids are directly picking up and understanding that it's empathy, but you'd be surprised how
Absorbent.
well, not exactly the word that I was looking for, but yeah, how much those kids are going to absorb that as a way of thinking about things. Oh, well, I learn math and reading this way, but Samantha, who sits next to me, learns about it differently. That doesn't make one of us smart and one of us stupid. It just makes us different. And we have
Yeah.
to understand that we're different. And once we understand those differences, now we can start to help each other.
Leveraging that diversity of thought to say, this is what I'm thinking about and I'm getting stuck. Let me go ask Samantha what she would think about this because I know that she thinks differently than me. I think that that's so cool. A couple of the other factors that are being focused on is an early literacy focus. They are starting them very young, saying, nope, we're getting to work. You're going to learn to read.
Great.
And they're
Because
measuring it.
that's the very foundation of learning. If you can't read, it's so much harder. Like,
You can't do
you're,
anything else.
yeah, maybe over time somebody could tell it to you enough that you would remember, but that's memorization. That's not learning.
Right.
Right.
The accountability reforms that especially are being utilized on parents that you guys have both mentioned and talked about. Hey, you're responsible for this kid just as much as we are. Get your shit in gear. We're
More
going to
so.
make this work. Yeah. Yeah.
It's your kid.
It's your kid. We're here to help, but you got to help us along the way.
But wait a minute. I'm just going to say, if you're starting in area that doesn't even know how to parent or has never been parented, hasn't grown up with that, that's a big ask.
Ignorance is not an excuse.
It's not an excuse. And I think that's the benefit of this program is that they're really including the parents and saying, no, you got to do this. This is important to your kid and we need you to step up. However that is, and we're going to help you step up. That's a lot.
Teach the man to fish.
Yeah.
I think that it challenges some of these assumptions that we're all guilty of making on plenty on an occasion. More money equals better outcomes. That isn't always true. These states are doing it with shoestring budgets and are being very successful.
Yeah.
I think the other one is that I mentioned a little bit ago, blue states are dominating education success. And that isn't necessarily true anymore either. The tide's changing. And you've got these very deep South, Southern states who are historically known for being terrible in schools. And they're like, nope, we're changing the game. Let's do it.
And one of the factors that they looked at, Maryland is supposed to have the best school district in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And these schools are exceeding what Maryland is producing in their literacy. That's amazing.
Yeah.
With some focus, and they're accomplishing that much. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I feel like as long as you're not living under a rock, it's pretty clear and evident to say Maryland's putting a shit ton of money into their education system. This is something that they very much value.
Like 3
And
times as much as what
yeah,
these Deep South, I mean, like
Per
30,000
student.
per student versus 10,000 per student.
yeah. I mean, and we're sitting here talking about the economy right now is weird. We all know this. No matter where you stand in it, it's weird. And so if you've got some proven system that can decrease your costs by 30% and have better outcomes, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I really am hoping that superintendents and school administrators, education administrators, and professionals across the country are looking at these couple of states and these programs that they're implementing in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama and going, we want a piece of that. Because I think that that just is yet another example of the more times that you get multiple people thinking about the same thing and even somewhere similar in the same vein, the more opportunity you have for growth in that. Wait, you guys are spending $10,000. You're getting these great results. What if we added this thing that you haven't been privy to? Now what can we do? The power that they possess all of a sudden is
I think
crazy.
there's another thing that you have to think about, and that is they are focusing on the basics of literacy. They are not arguing over which book the kid should read or what's in that book. They're just trying to get the kid to read, and it's producing results. And that's a whole different podcast. But if you can get people to read,
Yeah.
and then they can come to you with their ideas or opinions on what they've read, then we can have a whole conversation. It's pretty, again, I think it's that focus on not what they're reading,
But that
but
they're
that they
reading.
are reading.
I was talking to somebody the other day who was like, I just really hate reading. I'm not very good at it. A grown adult. I'm not very good at it. My comprehension sucks. So I don't even text. I just use voice memos. And I was like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
And my whole brain just short circuited. And I was like, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
I was so completely baffled.
I mean, yeah,
I think
I
it's more
get it.
common than you.
It's
To what?
extremely common.
I just think it's more common.
So there's a perspective that I want to take a look at here, because I think you could hear this and interpret it as a little bit draconian. Like, hey, we're holding the schools accountable. We're holding the teachers accountable. We're holding the parents accountable, which is very much the stick over the carrot. Callie, when you and I were in the Texas public education system, how did they incentivize us to learn how to read? Do you remember?
We had prizes like summer reading programs and how many books you could get through, and you got points and earned points or things like that.
Yeah. And what were those prizes?
Oh, I have no idea.
Pencils,
Yeah, yeah.
erasers, sticker
Not
books.
anything
Cheap toys.
exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheap toys. So,
Bookmarks. I
I
do
mean,
remember there were bookmarks.
yeah.
Paper bookmarks.
Did that work for kids like me who already were reading a lot? Yeah, it was great. But for somebody who struggled to read or didn't enjoy reading, it didn't really matter because the incentive was a pencil, a sticker. Like there wasn't really a positive, like, yeah, it was a carrot, but it was kind of a wimpy carrot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, this is kind of an example of the stick works. But is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, here's the deal, though. The stick might work, but it can be welded in many different ways. So let me give you an example. If you were a kid and you acted up, I could swat your butt and give you the mom look, and normally y'all would behave. The other finger. But there are also parents who beat the shit out of their kids for whatever. So they're both a stick, technically.
Yeah.
But they're welded completely different. And you have to think about the nuance of that stick and how it's being used. I mean, if you're going to go beat the parents up with said stick, I don't know that you're going to get a lot of positive response back.
But that's what the study is showing, is that they are getting a
it doesn't
positive response.
But they are, but they're not. I mean, it said
The
they're
threat
not
of the
really
stick.
taking them to jail. They're threatening, but they've not really
They haven't
taken
had
them to
to.
jail because they haven't had to. So
Because the
I
threat
just,
of the stick is enough.
yeah, there's a difference in a threat of the stick and the use of the stick.
Is there?
Yeah, I think that there is
Yeah.
a difference. I think that
Absolutely,
there is
there's
a difference. But I think that the other part of that is the same way we're sitting here talking about, I may not learn the same way as Samantha. You may not parent the same way as Samantha's parents. You may not react and respond to that stick the same way that Samantha's parents do. I don't know who Samantha is, but we're just going to go with it. But I think that they have somehow found these ways that said, we're going to use the stick that works. We're going to threaten the stick that works. And that's why they haven't had to take all of these parents to jail, because it's enough of a threat that it's working.
And I think from everything that I read, it's wrapped in compassion and empathy. And that's a lot.
Yeah. And I think that the other part that we need to take into consideration when we're having this conversation is the politicalization of it all, I guess you could call it. I mean, what a lazy response to sit here and just say, "Oh, red states suck. Their education sucks. Move on.
They're too
Write it
poor.
off."
Yeah.
And I think that this just goes to show that that narrative of red versus blue, or red policy versus blue policy, or ideology of red versus blue isn't the defining factor here, isn't the trait that is most important, that is most successful one way or the other.
Yeah.
And so I think
And
that
I
we've
love
got to be
that.
careful. I know. I think that we've got to be really careful. I mean, we're talking about this as the red state schools, but I think we got to be careful not to kind of lean into it the other way. Oh, red state schools are the best. And then start writing off blue state schools, because that's not right or real or reasonable either.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that narrative is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just a
I
tool.
agree. Propaganda.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Or an
That's
excuse.
what it is.
And so I like the idea that we're not using this as an excuse. We're going to teach the kids to read.
Huh.
Because
And
the
we're
kids
gonna
need to
thought.
know how to read.
You do your job and the job gets done. Surprise,
Yes.
surprise.
So weird.
So, I think with this, we talked about an energy shift and reform between the blue and red states, the politicalization, but there's also a part there. I mean, Bush had No Child Left Behind, and I don't know that it's always been successful.
I don't know
And
that
then
it's
you
ever
have,
been successful.
well, I was trying to be generous. Then you have,
Let's be honest.
Yeah, because I think that that's important. I think that that's the whole thing. Like, we can't sit here and coddle any single one group, because that's just hard. That's being nice versus being kind.
yeah. But the
And we're
other
all
part
guilty
of
of
this
that.
is that we're not seeing as much philanthropy go into schools as used to be there.
Mhm.
And so we're going to have to work on a different budget. And it has to be a budget that produces results.
And
And
that's
this seems to be
realistic.
working.
Yeah, I mean, we can't just continue to throw money at the problem if the problem isn't improving.
It's just a really fascinating idea.
So,
What you got, Jay-Z?
well, I mean, I'm going back to the carrot and the stick here, because if you only use the carrot like they tried to do with Callie and I when we were in school, again, it didn't work for everyone. I have friends that I went to school with that maybe were in a neighboring district that to this day struggle with their education, that didn't learn to read to the same level that I did, that don't have the ability to apply mathematics in the same way because they just tried to throw money at it. Now, again, you're talking about a 2-cent pencil as your prize, but I was the only one who was getting those other prizes because I was the one who was reading novels in 3rd and 4th grade.
And you would have been reading those books if there hadn't been a
Anyways,
competition.
exactly.
Yeah, because you were a reader.
Exactly. And they had the carrot dangled out in front of them, and it didn't work. And so that's just
Well-
kind of more evidence that, hey, throwing money at this isn't the solution. You have to teach the kids to read.
Yeah, I think that the underlying premise that we have come back to on this podcast on several occasions is that Cole, you and I grew up in the same school system, under the same roof, with the same general rules, with the same parents, with I mean, we've got a voracious reader in mom, we've got dad who's an encourager. I mean, I was not the one who was winning all of the 2-cent pencils. I didn't fall in love with reading until high school, and we learn differently. With all of the same characteristics and traits and input, we learn differently. And so then you start applying that out to a much broader scale of people, spectrum of people. Those educators have their work cut out for them. And I just think that we've got to be more encouraging of what works, not just
I agree.
what is supposed to work, what has
Well, I mean,
historically worked.
I think for one, we need a broader measurement of what works, a more accurate measurement to say, look, Oklahoma, your education system is flailing here. Hey, Nebraska, your education system is doing this right. What are different states, different communities doing right and wrong? Having a way to communicate that across the board and then apply it.
Well, and I think that the other thing, again, that we've talked about on several occasions, standardized testing is probably not the best measure of success.
Well, yeah, it goes right back to the parable of the fish and the monkey.
Right.
Because if you're judging me on my ability to read and you're judging someone else who is not a strong reader, who doesn't have a passion for it, I'm obviously going to score higher.
Yep. But what is it that they can do better than you?
That's what we have to find.
Right.
But again, that's addressing the individual. That's not a one-size-fits-all education. That's addressing the individual.
I think
And-
we've got to stop making assumptions.
We have
I'd
to
go
stop.
with assumptions.
We have to stop looking for the most simplified solution to hit the common denominator.
I keep thinking about your phrase, Cole, about analysis by paralysis. And I think that you could get here very easy. If you try to pull all of the school districts in the United States together and say, oh, you're doing X right and you're doing Y right. And how do we do that? But if you don't go to the very basics and teach basics, none of that is going to work for the majority. It will work for some people because there'll be some people who have that passion who just want to learn. But you leave a whole group of people out.
Well, you leave several groups of people out, but it's like you talked about earlier. Right now, our system is designed to teach to the average.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're leaving out anyone who's above or below.
I think that it's probably more than that. I think that there's some perfectionism at play here. Until everything is perfect, we can't do anything. I'm reading a book right now about prospecting for prospective clients, right? And he's talking about making cold calls. And he's like, look, you've got all of these people who are falling into this trap of analysis by paralysis, and everything has to be perfect. I have to know exactly who I'm talking to. I need to know what their schedule is. I need to know when this is going. I need to know where they are in this. I need to know all of these things. And they're making maybe one call and it is a failure because they've invested all of this time trying to figure everything out, versus the next person who's sitting there going, I don't really know what I don't know. Let's go call and figure it out. And they're making dozens of calls and having much more success, even though that in the grand scheme of things, they're significantly more underprepared and less educated on who it is that they're calling, but they can figure that out as they go.
They're just casting a wider net.
Yes.
That's a great way of saying it.
I think that the same thing applies here. We don't have to have everything perfect. Our curriculum is approved by every single parent and every single group and every single level of all of this. And it has worked on this 16 case studies in the last 26 years. And just figure it out. Go and
If it's
course
not
correct as
working,
you
try
go.
something different. Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
I do think that the three of us have a personality that is, and I say this, Cole, I'm questioning myself on that, but I think that there is a personality that is more given to saying, oh, look, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, I can fix that. But I got to do something. I can't just sit here. I got to do something. And doing something is better than doing nothing. And so
Yeah, I don't know if I would go there with you on that one for myself. I am definitely one who is very easily trapped in that paralysis by analysis loop.
that's why I second guessed myself.
But I think that one of the positive attributes that all three of us possess, which is why we're having this podcast, which is why we have these conversations, is because we all have an interest in being curious. I don't know everything. Let's go dig in and see.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Let's go look.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Can you explain it to me? And I think that curiosity is really, really beneficial. We have all stated how much we have learned about ourselves, about other topics, just by being willing to have the conversations. And except for Cole, we've all cried. We've all been frustrated. We've all gotten shut down. We've all been put in our place on plenty of occasions saying, but we keep showing up because we have an interest in curiosity. And I think that counts for something.
I think that counts for a lot.
I also think that for some people, a method that utilizes that would work, but it's not going to work for everyone because not everyone is curious. So
Yes,
you still have to
I agree.
identify a methodology to get those people to learn how to read.
agreed. But I guess my point is that the ball can't just stop rolling when you get to somebody who is different.
Yeah.
And I think that it takes somebody who's curious to recognize, hey, the ball isn't rolling anymore. What do I need to do? How do I try? And how do I try to get into
Why
the
did it
mind of
stop?
this kid? Why did it stop? And how do I get it rolling again? I think that ability to be curious is a requirement, not for everybody, but for the benefit of everybody.
Well, and I think that is partnered with involving everybody. So you've involved the kid, you've involved the teacher, you've involved the school district, you've involved the parent. And when you get them all looking in the same direction, I feel like you can accomplish something.
Huh. Community. Funny how that
How
works.
weird.
Y'all are so cynical.
That's not being cynical. That's just highlighting a point that we've made previously.
Okay. Maybe it's the way that you addressed it.
So again, I want to go into a little bit of my skepticism about this. I am not by any stretch saying that what they are doing is bad or unworthy of being done, that it shouldn't be done at all. But I am curious about how this will manifest in these kids' lives down the road. I am hopeful that these progressive movements within their schools and therefore their little tiny brains that are growing and malleable and learning will stick with them as they grow. I would like to see what the kids that are experiencing all of these positive
Focus.
focus, that's not the right word I'm looking for. These positive outcomes, all of these kids who were not expected to do this because their older siblings didn't or their parents never had to, but now they get to be the recipients of all of this knowledge. I would like to see how that manifests in their lives when they graduate high school.
I cannot imagine that if you teach a kid to read, it will not affect his entire life.
I agree with you. But how exciting would it be if all of a sudden you have a whole nother wave of
Well,
intelligent children growing up, coming out
mhm.
into their communities to make impact?
One of the things that these schools are showing is their graduation rate, their dropout rate has dropped amazingly and is below the national average. Something is going on there.
As an angler myself, you teach me how to catch fish. I want to go out and catch more fish.
Yeah. So I mean, I know you're skeptical and I agree with you. I want to see the historical impact. And I'm so excited that we're teaching something very basic that will affect everything within their lives. And I'm hoping that in 5 years, we just see this phenomenon from these states because they've done something that was right for the kids.
Yeah. I mean, the reading scores and the test improvements are not their only metric. Like you mentioned, Mom, the graduation rates are significantly improved. They're significantly more prepared for college. Their college readiness scores are higher. And the really crazy part about it, which goes right back to that, you can't say that more money is better or easier or that it's a red versus blue. You're seeing all of the equity across the various income levels and gaps and the racial groups. Like, it doesn't matter. Everybody is improving.
Yeah.
Everybody is benefiting from these kids learning.
I want to make a counterpoint to that, though, because in a scenario like this, I don't think you can make the argument that more money isn't better. Because what if they were using these same implementations and they had better funding? They've got more teachers, they've got better teachers. They can have the carrot and the stick.
I think necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so I think that if they're successful with as little money as they have, I think
They could
that's
be even
awesome.
more successful with more.
I don't
Well,
think
and
that
here's the deal, Cole. I think if you can be successful on a low budget of teaching basics, and then you can create a budget that that facilitates
amplifies.
that, amplifies that, maybe that's more and better computers or 3D printing classes, an extension of the availability of classes, or maybe it is better teachers. But, here's the deal. You got to get the teacher on board. And so you can pay that teacher a lot of money, but if they're not on board,
It doesn't
you've
matter.
lost that. It doesn't matter. And so I hear what you're saying about more money, but I just want to emphasize they're doing this without tons of money and they're producing results.
Sure. And that's great. I'm not saying that they have to have more money. I'm just saying that you may also want to consider that other facet of, okay, we figured out a successful method here. Now let's improve on it again.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. I think we've got to be really careful of falling into that trap of more money fixes things faster, because I don't think that that's always true.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but we already see historical evidence. You talk about the states, Maryland spends about 3 times per student. Okay, so maybe that's less efficient, but it obviously has produced results. So why not take the best of both?
Maybe. I think it'd be a hard case to salvage your budget in Maryland if you're sitting here getting whooped by these Southerners in
Well,
Louisiana.
if you take so they have method A, the old method, and they're making a large capital investment, and it is obviously showing returns. Someone else comes along and they say, hey, we have a strategy that is not as capital intensive, that is also showing positive returns. If you can combine those, if anybody wants to make the argument that investing in our kids is a bad idea, go ahead. I dare you.
I think that we just have to be really careful in general about feeding into that propaganda of it's red versus blue, that it's red states that are doing it right or blue states that are doing it better. or this amount of money that is the threshold. I think that it has to do with that policy execution, with
Oh, no, 100%. I work with people who trade all day and they throw money at stuff that's never going to win.
yeah,
But if they're well-informed, intelligent traders and they make investments in good ideas, oftentimes they're more successful because they have the extra capital. So I'm not saying, oh,
sure.
just throw money at it. Use your money intelligently. But if you can do that and you have more money, your results will likely be even better. It's compounding.
Yeah. I'm just saying we have to be careful not to lean on the existing propaganda that is so prevalent in our culture right now, that one is better than the other, that it's red versus blue, that only voting for president matters. Your vote doesn't count for anything else. Go vote for your school boards. Go vote for your superintendents. Like, it's making a difference.
I think the fascinating part to me and why this matters is, like you say, Callie, it's a contradiction of a narrative that ideology determines outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's valid because we need to get away from that. And I think that it shows that reform and progress can happen in unexpected places, places that we didn't anticipate, but who, you know, took an educated guess and did something and followed through with it and kept it and made a difference. So I think those things matter. And then, like we've just been talking, that systemic change doesn't necessarily require wealth or political alignment, but that it does require effective strategy. And I think those things are significant. I'm just going to say again, if you can teach a kid to read, you can change their life.
Agreed.
Yeah. Put 'em
So
on a
I'm
completely
very
different
excited that
trajectory.
this focus on literacy is appearing to make a significant difference.
You guys ready for my weird thought?
Yeah, we both kind of have one that are related today.
So I saw something the other day that I just went, oh my gosh, that's a great question. And now it's going to make me look like a complete moron after we've just had this conversation about the Texas public school system. So here we go.
I don't think so. I think everybody that hears it is going to be like, oh, yeah, why didn't I think of that? That is weird.
So I want to know, why is the alphabet in that order? Why is it ABC instead of LMV?
Isn't it based on the Greek alphabet? So it's just a pattern that we're following?
It's just a pattern that we're following. Somebody wanted it to be easy to remember, but even the Greek alphabet isn't in that order. Think about it. Z is zeta. Omega is the end. Alpha is A. Why is it in this 26 letter order?
The Greek alphabet, I think, has a little bit more symbolism inherent to it, with alpha representing the beginning and also being a letter, and omega representing the end and also being a letter that doesn't necessarily always mean the end. As its own letter, that's what it represents. But you could use it in a word, and it's not always at the end of the word. It's not always the end of the sentence. It's just a letter. My speculation is that our alphabet is in the order that it's in because they rhyme. Because you can make a song out of it that has been made.
I think the song came after the alphabet.
I was going to say.
But what if it was not in that order before the song?
You wouldn't have the song.
So who wrote the ABC song, and did they put it in order? And why did they put it in this order?
Y'all are goofy.
X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D. I mean, you could do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Order.
But imagine if you tried to stuff a W in for LMWP. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work because it's not natural to roll off your tongue. But if you said it over and over and over and over and over and over again, it would be natural eventually.
I don't know.
I think it
Maybe.
would. That's how people remember pi. Would it be easier if it was in order? Yeah, but it's not. So we just remember it in the order that it goes.
Maybe. I don't
Speaking
know.
of numbers, Cole, give me yours.
Yeah, my weird thought was because Callie asked me this last night about the alphabet, and I was like, that kind of makes me think about like, well, I made the stupid joke of I can't believe we're teaching our kids Arabic numerals because that's the numbers that we use. But then I started thinking there are counting systems that like we use a base 10 counting system. So 20 is 2 10s. But if you have like a base 12 counting system, 20 would be equivalent to what we think of as 24 because it's 2 12s. And I struggle so much to wrap my head around counting systems that aren't base 10 just because I think in base 10. But like I was looking at it last night, and there are some arguments to be made for a base 12 counting system. Like 1/6 of 10 isn't a round number, it's a decimal. But 1/6, 1/4, 1/3 of 12 would all be whole numbers.
Yeah.
It was a weird thought.
Isn't this the same thing, though, as the difference between using like a mile versus a kilometer? I mean,
Metrics.
Well, since
metrics,
those
thank you. It's gone.
both still count in base 10, not quite. 10 times 10 miles is always 100 miles. 10 times 10
Right, but
kilometers is always 100 kilometers.
Right, but in centimeters or millimeters, they're in tens or hundreds, right? Whereas in inches, it's 12.
Well, there's 12 inches in a foot. Are there 12 feet in a yard?
No, but there's
only 3. But I mean, it's the same idea. It's just what we've adapted.
Sure.
Who got to make these
Y'all are-
decisions? I would like to have them. You always ask that question about who do you want to have dinner with, dead or alive? Them. Whoever that was, I want to have dinner with them because I have questions.
I'm sure it was one individual that made all of these. It was the wizard, gal.
Well, I got one fist right for his nose. Then I'll ask questions. Or maybe I'll ask questions
Okay.
and then punch
Then
him
we'll
in
go
the
to the
nose.
wizard.
God, I don't want to.
Violence
Like
is always the
meters,
answer.
totally fine, but Celsius and kilometers per hour, not with it.
See, I think that that's just because that's what you're used to. I mean, but
100%.
who's going to sit here and say, oh, freezing is 32 degrees. Why isn't freezing 0?
Yeah.
Like Celsius makes so much more sense. The metric system in general is so much easier to learn and so much more logical. Why are we not doing that? We're like
Because
one of
we're
the only
English
countries in the
speakers.
entire world. We're idiots. We just overcomplicate everything for the sake of nothing.
It's
of
for the
being
challenge. You got to make yourself smarter by making things difficult.
Okay. Well,
What's our good news this week, Mom?
how about a good news story?
I'm ready.
So, my gosh. So, speaking of other things that shouldn't work, on the corner of 700 East and 100 South in Salt Lake City, there's a 3-story red brick Victorian mansion that was built in 1892 that is the home of the Other Side Academy, commonly known as TOSA. This is a residential facility with some 5-star businesses in Utah, run by convicts. It's built off of a model called Delancey Street in California, and TOSA is a facility that 120 men and women who have been arrested an average of 25 times each have come to live for an average of, I think,
2 to 4 years.
28 months, 24 months, something like that. There are no professionals at TOSA. There are no therapists or counselors. There's no guards. And there's nothing there but a family of peers who have found a way to be self-reliant. And it's working. No one pays to come to TOSA. They don't get tuition. They don't get insurance reimbursement. They don't get funding from the government. Instead, These students run world-class businesses in order to generate income and to help them learn new habits of living and working with others. And if you think about some of these people, I mean, one of the people that they mentioned was, a young girl who lived under a bridge with her mom, and her mom gave her meth when she was like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And what her life had been, and yet she came to TOSA. But so this came to me, first heard about it from a book called Crucial Conversations, which was about how to have a tough conversation and do it with love and empathy. And so you kind of think, okay, how does that relate? Well, it came together because TOSA does something on Friday nights called the games. And that's when they get in groups of around 20 people. The residents all come together and they sit and talk to each other. And if you have done something that has offended or that one of your cohabitants has a problem with, then the games allows them to address that with you. And what they're finding is that this relentless exposure to truth is the best way to empathy, growth, and happiness. And so I find it really hard to imagine sitting in a group of people who could come to me and say, I don't like what you did. I don't like the way you said this, or I don't like your podcast, and tell me why. And I have the obligation to stop and think, okay, did I do that right? Or am I wrong here? Or what's going on? But they're learning from this in a way that they didn't learn in their other life.
Well, and I think one of the things that's important to note here that is really, really weird about this in the best way, but there's no referee in this. Okay, easy now, Callie. Okay, calm it down. Okay, Callie, this is what you did. This is how it impacted me. This is what I think of you. Now you go sit with that. And the
I think it
response
would be
is,
really hard.
shoot, you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
And they may not always come back with, yeah, you were right the first time. But if another person comes to you or the same person comes to you and you continually hear that, then eventually you have to address that and recognize it. And so I think it's such a fascinating story that you have Delancey Place in California that TOSA was built off of, and that they're both being really successful with a group of people that are generally written off. So there was a guy named Zach who really is where TOSA came from. He had been arrested. He had spent 12 of the last 16 years incarcerated. This last time, his intention had been to be shot by cop. And he somehow got a copy of a book called Influencer, this new science of change, which was about Delancey Place. And then he wrote one of the authors
From prison.
and said, hey, can you help me get into Delancey Place? And the author and his wife became really involved with this and
Advocates.
started advocating for him. And it just so happened that his brother-in-law was a county attorney, and he called him and he said, this is not going to happen. I mean, maybe it'll work for somebody later on when we've got time to build this and do this. Maybe that'll work, but not for this guy. And he was really disappointed. But eventually the author called back and he goes, will you just ask? And they did. And people rallied around Zach. And the
And
next thing you know,
they all said
he's going
yes.
to Delancey Place with 3 other people from Utah. And from that, this group of people that became involved and became attracted by advocates by this, went on to build the Other Side Academy. And the success that it's showing, it's driven by 2 principles. One, that community as a change agent and the efficacy of self-help, and it's working. It's giving people new lives. It's saving taxpayer money. So I think it was really fascinating. They have 12 TOSA beliefs. I think it would behoove you to go and read these because it's something that shouldn't work, but it is.
I was reading something by the CEO on Reddit the other night, and he was responding to a comment about something. It was during COVID, and somebody was kind of trying to figure out what was going on and kind of calling him out a little. And he was like, okay, hold on. Here's what you're seeing. I understand that it looks different, especially during COVID when nobody's supposed to be where they were and all of this. He's like, but this is what's actually going on. And I'm really glad that you brought it to my attention because we abide by what we call 200% accountability. I am 100% accountable to myself, and I am 100% accountable for you. You are like 100% accountable to everybody else as well. And so I really appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We want to address this. We will make this right. I see how it was misconstrued to some extent, but we're going to change it anyway. We want to
But wait a
be
minute.
totally accountable.
What would happen if everyone was 200% accountable? What if we had real conversations with each other that we are afraid to have now? And we had real conversations that said, Callie, I don't like how you did that. And this is why I don't like it.
And this is how it could have been better.
And this is how it could have been better. What would we be like as a people, as a nation?
Under
I mean,
radical accountability.
under radical accountability.
Mhm.
It's just a really fascinating story. Go and read their 12 beliefs.
Yeah,
It's
but
worthwhile.
just be prepared. Even if you're Cole, you could cry. We won't judge. It's really good.
Good luck.
So that's my good news story. Something that shouldn't work, but is. 2 of them today.
I love y'all.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.